It's amazing how many years it takes sometimes to be able to hear a story that lines things up for us as far as what we like or why it clicks that we liked it. A lot of my favorite albums were recorded with reduced options, and a lot of that is by choice, a creative choice when they were recording. A good example, I don't know how I came across listening to Kings of Leon, Aha Shake Heartbreak, but that was their second album. They weren't very popular in the US around the time where I was listening to them. Like, they didn't have a hit that I knew of anyway. A friend of mine told me I should check out Kings of Leon, and if I'm not mistaken, I just I bought this CD kind of sight unseen because I had a long road trip. I was in the process of, like, basically, I was moving to Florida at the time, and I knew I had this long drive, so I wound up searching out CDs to listen to for the journey because it's a pretty long, hefty drive. It's like a 24-hour or something drive from where I was. So I remember being like, "All right, let's do this." And I picked out a few CDs, went to, at the time, a record store. It might have even been Tower Records way back then. And basically was like, I'll try this because I remember hearing it from a friend. Now, that album sounds so old school and amazing. And I didn't learn it till recently that album, recorded and mixed, produced by Ethan Johns, which is Glyn Johns' kid, and Jakir King. And Jakir King mixed the album along with Ethan, and they had no automation, and they used an old Abbey Road console, like one of the Beatles used consoles that they were using when they were at Abbey Road. Somehow, somebody Jakir knew had that thing kind of in storage, and he rented it. So he's sitting at this console, and he winds up recording everything to 16-track tape, and he didn't use more than 7 tracks to record the entire album. 7 tracks, 3 mics on drums, so kick, snare, overheads, and a mono overhead, mind you, a bass mic on the bass cab, no DI, 1 guitar, 1 mic for each guitar cabinet. There's 2 guitars in the band, so we've got 6, and a vocal mic, 7. Every song on that album had 7 tracks. Now, when he went to mix, he does say things like nothing had more than 12 tracks. So maybe they added something here and there. Maybe he used some parallel of some kind. Some of that is missing from the conversation. But what we do know is that he's using an old school console with no automation. He's sitting there to get it right with Ethan. They're both mixing the song together essentially on no more than 12 tracks. And what I realize is, first of all, how cool is it to have a 16 track and only use 12 of the 16? Coming from a digital life that we are all a part of for a long, long time, it must seem crazy to a lot of us, but to only use 12 tracks when you had access to 16. If I had access to 16, I'm sure I'd find a way to use all 16, but that's just a symptom of how I started recording. It's a symptom of, I originally started on a 4-track thing that I had to bounce, but that was like, amateur hour doing my own stuff back in the day. And then digital recording was right around the corner. So I've been doing the digital thing for so long that it's not part of my wheelhouse or purview to think in that way of like, let's keep it to 12 tracks maximum to mix at one time. But this does a lot of things for you when you reduce your options. It allows you to be more creative because you have less to work with. So you can memorize what's going to happen more easily. And then you can attack it from a performance standpoint and really manipulate the levels of things a little bit here and there. There's a great short video, if I could find it, I'll link it for you guys, where they talk about the making of that album. And you can actually see Jakir as a young man recording this thing on the console I'm talking about with the 16-track tape in the background. You could see this whole thing because great footage from where this was done way back. And it's amazing to watch people put so much emphasis onto the songs themselves, which is the important part of the whole thing, and also how involved the band is, literally watching over their shoulders while they get the balance right on the mix. They're watching them mix it to tape, and as Jacquier was saying, he would keep rolling it until they got it right. They would just keep, "Let's do another pass. Let's try it again." In other words, the performance of the mix was just as important as the performance of the parts. Very amazing way to work. Put the emphasis on performance all around, including the mixer. But beyond this, there's so many times that this happens where a limited set of tools gets a better result. I can think of a ton of albums off the top of my head. The White Stripes, Jack White, Meg Stripe, literally drums, guitar, and they got so much out of it. I remember exactly where I was when I first heard that too. My brother played, I think he saw them play somewhere like in Brooklyn and was like, "You got to hear this." And he had a bootleg cassette of the band. And, just listening to that on some little like Sony boombox thing, I was like, "Man, this is heavy. Like, why does it sound so heavy?" And his answer for that was they make the guitars super low end heavy, so as a result, like it sounds like they have a bass player, but they don't have a bass player. It was just right there was enough for me to be interested. And shortly thereafter, at some point, I heard "Fell in Love with a Girl" on like Howard Stern or like right after that on the radio, and I was just like, "What?" Back when you used to listen to the radio before you go to school. So I just remember thinking to myself, how many times does this happen where a limited set of tools gets a better result? Amy Winehouse, Rehab, that song Rehab, there's one mic on the drums. The drums are one mic. That's it. That was a Tom Elmhurst mix that he did. And if I'm not mistaken, Mark Ronson produced that, and the drums on his rough was like panned off to one side, kind of Beatles style. Music was on the other side, and Tom is the one who kind of centered that all in the mix and just made it feel like a modern record that was recorded a long time ago. So he kind of combined the best of both worlds in that. But this is like a philosophy that all these guys use. Tom Elmhurst breaks his session down to only what he can see on his screen. So that means if he's got 8 background vocals, he doesn't. He's got a pair of background vocals, and if he needs to rebalance them, he'll worry about it later. He gets a rough balance, and then it becomes one stereo track of background vocals. And he'll do that with an entire session to make it where it's manageable for him. He's talking, it's got to fit on 24 tracks kind of deal. And this is exactly how I used to work when I was summing, because I would have to force everything into the 24 tracks. The 50/60 goes 24 to 2. So that means everything has to go to 24. So it made me make my sessions that way. And there's just something about forcing yourself to have less to deal with that makes you quicker at navigating the session, quicker on the draw for how to be creative, as opposed to thinking of so many things and having to scroll through a session. That kills creativity like nothing else. When I have to flip through a session for like, even if it's 4 seconds to get to where I'm looking for something, and it becomes 10 seconds when I miss it and I got to go the other way to find it, what a disaster. Put everything in your sessions in the same place all the time, but manage the session to get the giant sloppy mess of whatever you did down to a way you can visualize it quickly on one page. And this concept, Steve Albini, what a brilliant, just a brilliant engineer. And he would want to be referred to as a sound engineer. And his whole method is like, we do it if it needs to be done, but we don't just do it to do it. You may want to double the guitar because there's a purpose, there's a reason, but don't just do it because you've heard people double guitar. Don't just do multiple vocals because you've heard people layer their vocals. Like, do it if you think it needs something. And if you're not sure, try it, learn, and see if it helps. And if it doesn't, kill it. Make decisions. The biggest tip you'll get from all these guys is when you have reduced options, you're forced into making decisions. You're forced to decide what sound you want and to get rid of the rest. when you have that maximum of the way he thought about, we could do it with 7 tracks. How many times you think someone else would have been in the same situation and put up like 16 mics on drums and been like, okay, we'll do the drums first and then the rest after? Like, that would be the opposite of making decisions. How many do you need to get the sound you want? And if it winds up being 3, then that's awesome. I'm going to come at my recordings completely different than I ever did before, because I'm of the mind that the way that the digital workflow is designed is basically forces us to take our attention and bring it into the menus of what else can we do? What else can we add? How can we taper the sound? How can we change it? How can we process it? All this. And we know we're always one undo away from going back. That's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, but because it's built into all our lives, we really have to fight not doing it. It's just like, other things that I fight not doing sometimes, like, my ridiculous OCD checking nonsense that I do, where I got to make sure the door's locked 3 times. I got to make sure that the light's off 4 times, like the bullshit. If I can force myself to ease up on that and trust myself there, you should learn also that it's the same kind of a thing when you're working. You trust yourself to commit to a sound. That informs your next decision. Without that, you're always living in this land of no decisions that always you can undo, and you really never have an opinion. Your opinion needs to be imparted on what you're doing. You're making a decision. And if you don't do that, you never get done. And that's why when mixing, like, I'm a huge fan at the moment anyway of doing this kind of a performance pass and not even automating it, just making it whatever it is. And, with the idea in my own head that, like, I'm working at a console that doesn't have automation, and that way it's different every time. And that way I'm less likely to go back and try to do it again. Because if I have a magic there, I want to stick with it. I want to be like, this was good enough because there's a magic. I don't need to go in and keep tweaking things and take out and make this one S lower and this one. I don't want to do that. I want to focus on what's important, and I want to get done with more things as a result in a way that I think I'll be more happy with. So we all got to, like, adjust our own stuff. But, in my mind, I'm constantly with the screwdriver tweaking this to try to make it more like, just because I have these things at my fingertips doesn't mean I should use them. And I think the way that all these guys made so many hit records with making decisions as the forefront, that's the kind of records I want to make. That's the kind of music I want to make. I want to make something that is different this time than every other time it could ever be done. And there's a magic in this time, and we captured it. So it's all about the performance. It's all about reducing your choices. Reduce your choices significantly. The undo button is not your friend. You think it is at first. And if you're just starting out, maybe the undo button's your friend. If you're just starting on your first day. But I would venture to say, if you build that habit of undoing everything, then that's what you're going to do forever. So maybe don't. Maybe go the other way. Pretend like you're working at a console, whether you're in the box or not. And if you have the ability to throw some gear in and you don't want to go through the hassle of writing the settings down, don't. Just don't. Don't, man. Just make it where you kind of know what you did. And then if you ever had to go back, you'll figure out close enough what it is. Because what we do, I think about this all the time. The work we make when we do a performance, because we're harnessing magic, it's really not so precious. The guys that made the best sounding records were working with the tools they had, and they used the tools to make the magic. Don't be afraid to touch the tools because you won't get the setting back. I worked that way for a really long time, and I'm telling you, I think that's a bad move. The amount of peace of mind you may get because you can pull it up because you haven't touched the setting in forever, it also removes all the creativity you could have experienced for all that time that you didn't touch the setting. All the creativity you could have, the rush that you would feel, the excitement, to actually turn the knobs, to change the settings up, to maybe get more out of what you're hearing, to take the song in the direction you want, to perform while you're mixing. You know, there's a magic to that. Don't play it safe. It's the biggest tip I could give you. Do not play it safe. Start taking risks. Commit sounds, and then use that to influence the next thing that you do in the song. Make big moves. I'm telling you, at the end of this, if nothing else, it will be a more creative mix. As a result, it might be a lot better to you. So mess with this stuff. Questions, answers, throw it in the comments. Like, subscribe. I appreciate it. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.